So this is to me what I would consider to be a more than a movie classic. This is honestly cinema masterpiece, right? Now, I'm talking about the movie The Shawshank Redemption. This movie stars Tim Robbins and Andy Dufresne, and the basic gist of the movie is Andy is convicted of killing his wife and her lover, uh, and is sentenced to two consecutive life sentences that he has to live out. Now, I watch this movie continuously, and I recently watched it because I every now and then I like going back and watching some of the classics. I believe that was the one of the golden eras of movie writing, directing, and this film to me really shows a masterpiece or a master class in writing ability. Now, with that said, though, me watching a movie when I was younger is a little different from me watching a movie nowadays, especially given the fact that as I'm watching this, I was with my family, and there was a few particular scenes that, you know, without even thinking about it, I kind of just looked at it, and immediately my first reaction was, well, that's dumb. And I had to catch myself really quickly, close my mouth, because one, certain movies you just don't talk about. Movies like Jaws, the Godfather, and Shawshank Redemption was right there in that list. Now, all that said, though, I might not talk about it there, but I'm definitely going to talk about it here. So here are four things that really stood out to me when I'm watching this that I had a bit of a problem with. I don't know if you'd consider these to be plot holes, but let's consider these to just be questionable scenes, right? Now, the very first thing that the movie wants me to believe. So Andy serves 20 years. Andy in his cell is taking his 20-year timing to dig a hole into the wall. And as he's digging this hole into the wall, it takes a considerable amount of time for it to actually make some impact, right? Before there's anything really concrete, no pun intended. Now, with all that said, one thing that you'll get to know is not just Andy and Red, their relationship and how it develops, but you also get to see how the guards interact with Andy and Red and much of the other inmates as well. The guards are not lighthearted. They're not to be taken lightly. With all that said, though, they find every excuse to persecute Andy, Red, and whomever else. They will go through any means to make sure that they know that they cannot step out of line, even if it's random checks, even if it's solitary confinement, beatings of some sort, right? So the guards really don't joke around. So what the movie wants me to now believe is that in that 20-year period of time, Andy has been making headway with this small object, and while he's digging his hole and slowly digging his hole, not a single guard during their many inspections checks behind that poster to see that there is actually a hole that's being dug. These guards of this mentality, and if you've watched the movie, which I believe that most have, if you've watched this movie, not a single guard in that period of time checks behind that poster. You really want me to believe that? I find that to be highly improbable, especially since they were known for looking for reasons to just persecute you. Yeah, I don't find that believable. Another thing, as Andy actually escapes, he's crawling through or whatnot, and finally makes his way down to the pipe. As he makes his way down to the pipe, he gets access to the feces pipe by bashing it with a stone. And I had to just look at myself and just say, now, how likely is that? How likely is that actually happened? This pipe that has no rust on it, that has no signs of damage on it, that's perfectly intact, and that looks like it's perfectly intact for the most part anyway. Are you really trying to convince me that this pipe that looks like it's intact was destroyed by a stone? Have you tried destroying a pipe lately? If you haven't, I was gonna suggest you go try one, but I don't want to advocate you doing any kind of jail time. You might need to break out in the same fashion that Andy did. But nonetheless, though, I'm not convinced that Andy was able to destroy this without that stone having any kind of, rigid points to it, any kind of pointy ends to it. That he just bashed it, and at that, bashed it only 3 times. Really? You're trying to convince me that after 3 strikes, that thing opened up and he was able to do some damage? No. No. Another thing that really stood out to me. Now, when Andy comes into the jail, he looks like a fairly young man. When he leaves the jail, he still looks like a fairly young man. And of course, you could see that he's aged, and Morgan Freeman has aged, right? And that's all good and gravy. But after all of the moments of experiencing, solitary confinement, the beatings, the lack of food, the lack of exposure, the lack of air that they would have, right? The kind of conditions that they were forced to. Are you really trying to tell me that their hairlines are still intact? It didn't recede some? That they have little to no wrinkles? That their teeth are still intact? And they're still of a moderately good weight? No. I wasn't convinced of that one as well. If you see the conditions that they have to live with again, you would know that these 2 men would come out looking brutalized, like if they've been abused. They still look fairly okay. Now, the last one that I'm going to talk about, I actually, it's what made me say what I said earlier, right? That as it was happening, I was looking at the movie, and then I accidentally kind of just screamed out, and I had to kind of catch myself because my family, you don't talk during movies just like that. But yeah, you especially don't say that for the Shawshank Redemption. Heck, it's one of all of our favorite movies, right? But as this scene was happening, I really just had to kind of just look at it and just go, well, that's dumb. And then I caught myself, and I was like, oh, why did I just say that? Because the scene made no sense. So the scene that I'm talking in particularly about, right, is after Andy has finally gained access to this hole, and he determines that this is the night, this is when I'm going to leave, this is when I'm going to escape from this prison. He climbs into the hole. He does so head first. Even if he didn't do so head first, it's very important that you remember that he did so head first, right? He climbs into the hole, and he begins to crawl through. After they realize that Andy has escaped, they throw a pebble at the picture. I think it's of Raquel Welch. Raquel Welch. It's a poster of Raquel Welch. Now, during this moment, it creates a hole, and that's when they pull the poster down. Here's my question. How is it that Andy, after digging through the hole, after climbing into the hole, and then crawling through, managed to put the poster back up? That would be the equivalent of me walking through a door, closing the door, and then locking the door from the other side. That's exactly what that's like. There's no way that Andy could have used his feet. There's no way that Andy could have turned around. There's no way that Andy, from the inside of that hole, could have put that poster back up without doing no damage. Now, the reason why I say no damage is it's already impossible. It's already darn near impossible for you to do that just right off the bat. But then to do that and then not cause any damage to the poster at all, that it could still hide the hole for us for a good amount of time until they realize that you're gone. I just looked and, well, my goodness, Shawshank Redemption has a massive plot hole. A plot hole the size of the T-Rex bunker in Jurassic Park. And we'll talk about that another day. That's probably going to be one of the last ones I talk about because, my favorite movie. But yeah, how did Andy put the poster back up? Did he use his feet? Did someone else come behind him and put the poster back up? I didn't see any indication that someone did it. Did he cut a deal with one of the guards and they're just pretending? If anyone has any explanation for this, I would greatly appreciate it, because I looked at that scene and just went, well, my goodness, that is actually dumb. That makes no sense. So, if you have an answer, by all means, I'm all ears. But when I watch The Shawshank Redemption, as brilliant as this movie is, it does have some glaring holes in it that I think warrant some explanation. So if anyone has any explanation, like I said already, I'm all ears. Until then, I will see you guys for the next one. If you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing? Go watch it, and maybe some other stuff will stand out to you as well. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. See ya.